James Cameron, lynching survivor and founder of the America's Black Holocaust Museum. He was born February 23, 1914, in La Crosse, Wisconsin, to his mother, Vera Carter, and his father, James Hubert. Growing up, he had two big moves after his father left the family, but they ended up living in Marion, Indiana. Growing up, Cameron received the nickname Apples because he always had apples in his lunch. Like in David Cheriandi's brother, he grew up without a father figure in his life. In 1930, Cameron got a ride from two older schoolmates. While in the car, they began to plan a robbery, and quote, "Like an idiot, I followed," he said. They gave Cameron the gun and told him to rob a couple. When he went, he realized it was Claude Dieter and ran and gave the gun back. Cameron and the two other men were arrested. He was put in jail for the murder of Claude Dieter and the rape of Mary Ball, which he later said that was a lie. Soon after they were arrested, the KK members stormed the jail to get Cameron and the two other men. He was lynched soon after. Quote, "They had a rope around my neck and they were going to rope me up between my buddies, and I prayed to God," end quote. Cameron said in an interview with Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Before the lynching, they beat the 16-year-old. It is said he looked up at his neighbors and the people he knew watching him go through all this. With the noose around his neck, he was ready to die. After the lynching, he was sent to 21 years, which he only faced 2 years of, and he started writing down his experience. In 1935, he published his book, A Time of Terror, a survivor's story. After Cameron's terrible incident, he decided he wanted to, quote, "pick up the loose threads of life and weave them into something beautiful," end quote. He later got married to a nurse and had children. They moved to Anderson. He started working to Delcro Remy. Later, he founded 4 branches of the NAACP, which stood for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. This organization studies civil rights violations. In 1988, Cameron founded the America's Black Holocaust Museum. This museum brings public awareness of the harmful legacies of slavery and Jim Crow in America and promotes racial repair and reconciliation and healing. Brush and undergrowth. Like in David Cheriandi's brother, Michael and Ruth, after the loss of Francis, are very upset, but they persevered to the good times after grieving. A similar situation happened with Jordan Davis and Trayvon Martin. Their families had to go through so much just because the color of their child's skin. They endured much grief and sadness. After a while, they tried to make the best out of the situation, with the Black Lives Matter movement becoming more prominent and bringing awareness to racism. In Cameron's life, he wanted to put back together, so he did just that, with his museum and the NAACP really trying to wake awareness for what happened and his story. Jelly's audio mixing tape. In Brother, Jelly uses his mixtape to reclaim the past. The word griot was used in the novel and meaning any class of musician entering of West Africa whose performances included tribal histories and genealogies. They are using this to keep the traditions alive and commemorate Black lives. Although Cameron did not use his music to symbolize and recognize Black voices, he used his museum. It has personal stories and celebrates Black lives before captivity, and memorials for Black lives that have been taken. The use and abuse of power. In the novel Brother, the abuse of power was very shown. The manager searching Michael, the police searching Desiree's because it was a place where Black teenagers would hang out, and the police officer shooting Francis. In Cameron's life, he has gone through alike situations, the mob storming the jail for Cameron and the other men, just because of the color of their skin. You can see the white privilege they have for just being able to go into a jail and taking people out to kill them. If this was a group of people of color, it would not be normalized at the time. The KKK had much power at this time, so the officers just let it slide. Prejudice, profiling, and the fear of the unknown. Cameron was wrongfully treated for his crime. Hanging young men in front of people cheering for joy was not acceptable. He was only an accessory for murder. He did not commit the crime, so why is he getting beat and hated by many? With the boys, Jordan Davis and Trayvon Martin, they were both killed for being innocent boys. They were seen as violent and guilty when they were all victims of prejudice and profiling. Loss of innocence and stolen childhood. Cameron was known to be a very good child and wouldn't want to hurt anybody, but at the age of 16, he was lynched in front of many and brutally beaten. Also growing up, he endured a lot of racism. Growing up as a black child in the 1900s was not easy. They were also known as less than and as they did not matter. Having to deal with this at such a young age was not easy. With Michael and Francis, they dealt with one after the other problems with racism and not being treated the same as other white people. Cameron really brought awareness to lynching. He has showed the world that when bad things happen, you can turn around and try to make the world a better place. Despite the fact that James Cameron had to go through all this racism and being treated differently in the 1900s does not mean it's over just like that. As a young black woman living in a predominantly white city, being treated differently and racism happens all the time. Although James Cameron isn't with us anymore, his legacy will forever be remembered for being such an influential person on the world.